It's very difficult for me to pinpoint particular programs. I've been very fortunate. I've only ever worked in national television programs, and oddly enough, I've only worked in television programs that had never been seen before, like This Day Tonight, like 60 Minutes, like Foreign Correspondent, like Dateline, like George Negus at 6:30, like George Negus Tonight, like Australia Talks. So I've been very fortunate that all of my programs, including Foreign Correspondent, were programs that didn't exist before I did them. I jokingly say that one of my major contributions to Australian television is that I changed the way television journalists dressed. In fact, the way I dressed became a debating point. It became a talking point, almost a contractual issue about whether or not I could stop wearing ties, whether or not I needed to wear a jacket or a suit in the Sahara Desert or the Amazon jungle. What Negus wore on the box became an issue, and I think I won, because now at least people, blokes anyway, on Australian television look like normal human beings most of the time. So I broke the dress rules, deliberately. It's now that it's possible for in this day and age of much higher technology, I think it's very important that we at least try to preserve those aspects of my profession and my industry, if you like, news and current affairs, television, journalism, so that we get a proper historical perspective on it. Maintaining the past enables us to understand the present and if you like, foresee the future. So I think it's invaluable. I'd hate to have to put a price on the worth of what the National Sound and Film Archives do for the country. It's part of our history. It should be seen as part of our history. It's our audio-visual history. Yeah, that's true. You have to know the context, and the political context, the economic context, the cultural context. I'd like to think in my case that we tried to provide that at the time. That's probably why I've never been really a television news journalist. I've been a television current affairs journalist, which in a way is there, it exists almost entirely to explain what the news doesn't explain to people. So that was my audio-visual professional experience of choice, was to answer the question why, not just what, how, when and who. That's news. But my bag, journalistically, was current affairs, which almost asks the question why, and that alone. Why do things happen? Why do they do that? Why don't they do that? You know, why didn't that happen before? I mean, I think it's the most important question any journalist can ask, is why. The secret to either a good interview or a good story is being genuinely interested in both the subject matter and the person and persons that you're dealing with. I think it's a totally fraudulent journalistic act to pretend that you're interested in the person you're interviewing and to pretend that you're interested in the issue that you're discussing with them. I think it's rude, it's insulting, it's counterproductive, it's hollow, and I don't think journalists should, if you like, prefabricate their level of interest or enthusiasm for what they're doing. The secret is, would you be interested in doing what you're doing, the interview that you're doing or the story that you're doing, if you weren't getting paid for it? Would it interest you as a person as much as it would interest you as a journalist? If the answer is yes, it would interest me, or does interest me as much as a person as it does as a journalist, then you're probably on the right track. I don't know that I could ever say that I felt intimidated. A healthy level of anxiety is probably a better way to put it. I mean, if you're interviewing somebody like Margaret Thatcher, whose name gets mentioned almost whenever I talk to anybody about my work, she was being called at the time the most powerful woman on the planet. I mean, that idea is intimidating, but the person isn't. I mean, I think what we have to remember about people with so-called power and authority and influence is that behind all that facade of authority and power that politics or celebrity status or income gives them, they're pretty ordinary. People are people first, and whatever other label we've given them later. Now, I can't say that I've ever been intimidated. I've been concerned, but I'm always enthralled by the fact that when you do bother to show serious interest in what they're doing instead of asking knee-jerk journalistic questions, no matter how powerful and intimidating the person might be, they actually are interested enough to want to talk to you. I was told once by a very, very famous person, I enjoyed that interview, I liked your questions. How did you work out what to ask me? And I said, I've tried very hard to make the questions as interesting as I'd like your answers to be. And I think that's a secret. I mean, if a journalist goes through the motions, the person they're interviewing will A, notice it, B, exploit it, and C, probably get away with it. I can tell. In the same way that the journalist is trying to work out what the interviewee is all about, the interviewee is trying to work out what the journalist is all about. And if you're genuinely interested, no matter how powerful they are, and not just asking, smart alecky questions, but seriously interesting questions, then they'll respond most of the time. I can't remember many occasions in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews where the person I was interviewing didn't want to hear the next question. That's the trick. That's the trick of a genuine interview, is if the interviewee wants to hear what you're asking them, not just something totally predictable. You mean in television terms, what next? No idea. No idea at all. I think there comes a time in most people's professional life where it's not time to stop. It's time to stop and think about doing things just for the sake of it. I'm a little bit negative at the moment about television in this country, and it would have to be a very, very interesting thing that would get me back in front of a camera at the moment. I think you have to know in your own being whether you want to continue doing what you're doing, or whether you want to exploit what you've learned and what you've been doing in the past. So I may be at that point. However, if some clever person came along with an idea that I thought was worth kicking around, like those other programs I mentioned that had never been done before, I'd probably be enthusiastic about getting in front of a camera. But if somebody asked me to do a tired-old idea that's been tried before, I'd probably say, see you later, and go back and read a good book. But I don't think you should thrust yourself into people's living rooms. I think you should wait to be invited.